everybody, thank you so much for coming back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about The Expendables. And as you guys can tell from the title and the thumbnail, I am once again joined in this video by my boy Benny-Wan Kenobi. We just recently finished up the Firefly trilogy, Rob Zombie's trilogy, starting with House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, and then Three from Hell. And yeah, we recently were talking about doing another trilogy together, and so we're going to be doing The Expendables, a film directed by Sylvester Stallone and spearheaded by Sylvester Stallone. I believe he's also a producer and one of the main writers on this film. And I'll go ahead and say it right now, what makes these films without a doubt is the cast. I remember growing up and being definitely a big fan of 80s and 90s action heroes, and my dad was a big fan of those movies growing up as well, and it was something we bonded over. And we always talked about how awesome it would be to see people from that action era come together to make like this ultimate cast when it comes to an action movie. And then somewhere around 2008, 2009, they announced this movie called The Expendables that was gonna do just that, and it would get bigger and bigger with each installment. Now, I'll go ahead and say right now, you don't go to these movies for the story. There is a story here that you can latch onto as far as just knowing what's happening, but it's not necessarily a really gripping or grounded story that's going to get you completely emotionally invested. But it is a fun enough story, and it's really about the action and seeing these heroes and these characters and this cast all together. So like I mentioned, this film is spearheaded by Sylvester Stallone, but outside of him, you have people like Jason Statham, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jet Li, Steve Austin, Eric Roberts, Bruce Willis, and so many others. Dolph Lundgren is another one of the big ones in here. And there's just so many big names in this movie. Terry Crews is in this movie as well, and in this franchise. And I just really have a good time with this series. Now, like I mentioned, narratively, it's not really what you come to for these films. I think that they make it pretty clear when you're watching this movie that it's really about the over-the-top action, a bunch of really greased up muscle-head dudes, a bunch of old-timey action stars that still really look good for their age and kick a lot of ass. And what I can say about this film on an overall level is, outside of some special effects that don't work all the time and some things that look a little bit cheesy, for the most part, the action really holds up. There's some great moments of dialogue between the characters. There are also some very cheesy one-liners thrown in here. That's definitely a big part of this trilogy. But going back and rewatching it and rewatching this trilogy, I had a good time. Sylvester Stallone is great as the main character, Barney, who is essentially the leader of this ragtag group of mercenaries that go out and do these jobs that nobody else can do. You know, that typical kind of idea where you have that group of badasses that are sent in to do jobs that the US government doesn't want to get their hands dirty with. And yeah, I have a really good time going back and watching these films. Again, it's really all about the cast. It's about the action. It's about the great little moments of dialogue that call back to old films of theirs. Maybe there are specific quotes and lines that are completely lifted from those older films. And yeah, there is a cheesy element to it, but I think it leans into it enough that these films can be enjoyable. Now, like I mentioned, the narrative is not necessarily strong, and when they're sent on one of many missions that they've been sent on, Sylvester Stallone's character Barney ends up getting a little bit emotionally attached to this woman that was there when they were there on the mission. And most of their missions is just kind of come in, do what they got to do, and leave. But he knew that he was going to be leaving her in some dangerous situations, and he couldn't really live with himself. So him and the whole crew come back. Initially, he wants to come back on his own, but he ends up bringing the whole crew with him, and they go back to save her and kind of just like, big action sequence, go save the damsel in distress kind of thing. And the woman would go on to become nobody in this franchise later on. You don't really care about her after the film, and you don't really care too much about her in the movie. And I think that that's definitely without a doubt the weakest part of the movie, is that you have this story that's centered around Barney's character wanting to go save this woman that he only met briefly for a short period of time. And she's supposed to be the love interest, and she's far younger than Sylvester Stallone, but he's also like just so enamored with her that he just feels like he has to save her. But it's easy enough to buy into. It's over the top, it's cheesy, it knows what it is. I don't think this is a film that you'll find yourself completely emotionally invested in, but I think that if you are a fan of these actors and a fan of action, there's just so much to lean into here. Like I mentioned, it just knows what it is. It knows that it's cheesy, and it just wants you to have a good time with these action heroes and their one-liners. Now, before I give you guys my final thoughts on this movie, let's go ahead and hear what my boy Benny-Wan Kenobi had to say about this.
Hey everybody, it's Benny-Wan Kenobi, and I'm back with Anthony to review the Expendables trilogy, everybody. Thank you again, my man, for having me in a movie review with you. Very cool. I love doing these with you, bro. Lots of fun. And these are right up what kind of mood of movies that I'm in right now, because I've been watching a lot of 80s sci-fi horror action movies lately, like the Aliens, and I started the Predator movies. I've been in the mood for 80s and 90s action type movies. So this is perfect timing for me. So, the first Expendables sees a CIA operative hires a team of mercenaries to go eliminate a Latin director. This movie is directed by Sylvester Stallone himself. That's right, everybody. So, and basically to me, this movie is the equivalent of the 80s and 90s action stars Avengers level type movie, because it was the first time that a bunch of these people, these guys that were in all these great B 80s, 90s action movies came together for the first time on screen. Literally, some of them, it was the first time they were ever in a movie together. And it's like the Avengers coming together, but 80s action style, everybody. We got Sylvester Stallone, we have Jason Statham, we have Jet Li, Dolph Lundgren, Terry Crews, Mickey Rourke, Bruce Willis, everybody, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then we got some more modern people sprinkled in there too, like Randy Couture, Stone Cold Steve Austin, that's right, the WWF, that's right, I grew up in the WWF era, so representing. So right off the gate, this movie has a very bloody, badass action scene right out of the gate, everybody, and that sets the tone for this movie. The rest of the movie, it seriously does. And the movie is littered with action, you guys. Littered with action. And what I like about this movie is there are some CG elements to the movie. Like, there's a little bit of CG blood here and there. And some of the explosions are CG, but for the most part, they blow shit up in this movie, everybody. And I gotta tell you one thing. I love it when they blow things up for real instead of it being CG. Nothing beats the real explosions, everybody. Like, as good as they can make CG explosions look, it is very nice to watch them actually blow something up. Like, there's a scene with a dock that just gets annihilated with explosions. Oh, it's just 80s awesomeness right there, you guys. 80s awesomeness. And one of my favorite scenes in this movie, it's a really quick little scene, but we get to see Sylvester Stallone, Bruce Willis, and Arnold Schwarzenegger in a movie together for the first time. It's not very long, but the dialogue between the three of them is amazing, you guys. I won't even talk about what they said to each other, but you can imagine what they said to each other, because they all were competing against each other in the late 80s in their movies, so you can just imagine what they're saying to each other. It's one of the best parts of the freaking movie, like, seriously. So, and to end this off, really, this series is basically a celebration and like a love letter to the 80s and 90s action genre of movies, because a lot of the 80s action movies that these guys were all in, they were B action movies. They were never like the best stories, and you got your like one centric like characters. They're just there's not really a whole lot of depth to them. You go to watch these movies to watch these guys have big ass guns, bazookas, rifles, shotguns, whatever, grenades, C4, it doesn't matter. You go into these movies to watch these guys kick some ass, blow some shit up, shoot some bitches. That's what this movie is. It's a celebration of all of that, and I love it. And it's just a good series. I'm excited to watch the other two and review these, man. Thank you again for having me in this series with you. Super excited, and I'll send it back to you, bro. I'll be catching you on the tube later, because we have spoken.
As usual, a big thanks to my boy Benny for being here in this video with me. Love what you had to say about this movie, man, and I'm really excited to go through this entire trilogy with you. As usual, guys, you can find the link to his channel down below in the description box. Go give him some love. Let him know I sent you. He's got tons of stuff going on over there, like movie reviews and unboxings and digital code giveaways. So if you guys are interested in any of that, go give him some love. But yeah, I appreciate appreciate you being in this video with me, man. So yeah, The Expendables. I don't have a whole lot more to say about this movie. What I really love about this film is the cast. You just have a really badass cast that is there to have a good time. The movie is so self-aware, and it just knows that it's really about the action and seeing this badass cast all together. I remember when the initial trailer came out, and really the crux of the trailer was just showing all the names on screen with really dramatic sounds and dramatic music. They knew that the calling card for this, they knew that what was going to be pulling you in was going to be the cast, and I think without a doubt it's easily the strongest part of this film. Some of the lines of dialogue and callbacks to older films are definitely cheesy and lean into that 80s 90s feel of action films, but at the same time it modernizes it with some pretty badass action. Like I mentioned earlier, there are some special effects like some blood squibs that are CG that sometimes don't hold up. There are some vehicles that are CG that sometimes stand out. However, there is a pretty solid use of practical effects in this film as well, and again, you just have this really badass cast that really just knows what kind of movie they're in, and they just want to make a fun action movie, and I think that they definitely succeed when it comes to that. I think one other thing that's kind of funny is, like I mentioned, a lot of these actors are a lot older at this point, specifically Sylvester Stallone, and as the films go on, and in this film as well, you start to notice maybe in the way that they run or the way they hold their guns or do certain things that they're definitely aged, and they probably wouldn't actually be doing too well in these situations that they're in. However, I think Sylvester Stallone looks jacked and great in all of these movies, and they all look great in these films. They really all are badass. Jason Statham and Sylvester Stallone have such great chemistry in these films, and I have a really great time going back and revisiting them. I actually watched each of them twice leading up to reviewing this, so I'm pretty excited to go ahead and talk about the rest of them. So yeah, guys, I would love to hear what you guys have to say about The Expendables. Do you like these movies? Do you not like these movies? Are they too cheesy for you, or are they the right amount of 80s, 90s cheese for you? I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. Comment those thoughts down below. Let me know what you guys have to say. Hit that like button if you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button. I would definitely appreciate it. There's way more content coming down the line. Again, a big thanks to you guys for watching. Go give Benny Wan Kenobi some love in the description box down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.